Welcome back to Introduction to Engineering Design. Today we're going to work on learning how to do a few new tools with Solidworks. What we're going to work on is learning how to do a Revolve boss base, apply a chamfer, and a fillet tool. So first, before we get started, you want to go to the LMS. And at the LMS, you're going to have the instruction sheet. Now you can either view it in the LMS itself, or you can download it using the PDF link where my cursor is at. I've chose to download that, and I happen to have it sitting right here on my desktop. Very first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and visit your Westwood Engineering hour folder. I happen to be in second hour, so I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new folder. So I'll go in here and right click, new folder. I'm going to name this folder 1.2.5. That's just where I'm going to store my part for this exercise and subsequent exercises that support this. So now I've got my folder made. I want to go ahead and start up SolidWorks, and I've got SolidWorks running in another window. Let me pull it up. All right, SolidWorks is running now, and we're going to go ahead and make a Revolve boss base. And this is just another way of extruding material out, except we're going to extrude that material out in a circular pattern, or a revolve. And when we look at the essence of what a revolve is made up by a sketch in any plane with a line in that plane that we're going to revolve around. Now in this instance, I've got an 8mm circle revolving around this center line where my cursor is flashing. And it is revolving around at a 20mm diameter. You'll see that when I revolve that around, I make this fancy little green donut. I've colored it to give a little better depiction of it. Essentially, a revolved boss base is a 2D shape that's revolved around up to 360 degrees around an axis. So if we take a look at our part, and we've got our part drawing up in the document, you'll see that we're going to make this little doohickey here. And it's basically a round object with some smooth corners and a square object on the top. So we're going to make this part using a revolve boss base, 2 fillets, and a chamfer, and an extrusion on top. Forgot to put that in the document. So the full drawing looks like this for the part. And we'll reference back to this in particular points. Now, a couple of important things about this drawing. This drawing shows a front view where my cursor is flashing. It shows several detailed views, A, B, and C. And you'll notice that detail A, B, and C also appear. Now, we're going to go ahead and start this out by making this a millimeter part. So that's the first thing I want you to do. So let's go over here and start, and we're going to go down in the lower right corner where it says IPS. Click on that, select MMGS. We're now in millimeters. Now, in any plane you would like, we're going to start a new sketch. I'll go ahead and go Sketch, Tab, Sketch button. I want to sketch in the front plane for this particular exercise. And the first thing I want to do is I want to take what's called a center line. And a center line is found on your line tool, and right here, center line. And what that does is it draws a geometry that I can build around, but it won't be included in the part that extrudes, cuts, or revolves. So I'm going to start at the origin, click once, release, pull it up, drop it when I get a vertical reference. I can hit escape to get out of that line tool. So there's my revolve axis that we're going to use. And you'll notice that our part here revolves around, and I'm going to make these 2 shapes right here. And the shape that I'm going to make are basically 2 little rectangles. So we're going to go ahead and draw this shape right here. And I just want to make that shape approximately correct. I don't need to make it dimensionally correct just yet. So let's start. I'll grab my line tool, start at the origin, and I'm going to bring it up. I'll come just a little bit less than my construction line is. Drop it, pull it vertically out, or horizontally out rather. Come vertically down, horizontally out, vertically down until I'm level with my origin. Click, and come over and meet my origin. When I click, it turns gray. It's a closed body. I can exit my line tool. Now I want to grab my Smart Dimension tool, and I want to dimension this. Now the dimensions that I want to use here, you'll see, I want to make this thing so that it's basically 65 centimeters, or millimeters rather, in diameter when it revolves. 30 millimeters in diameter when it revolves. 35 millimeters tall, 20 millimeters tall. So let's grab our dimension tool. And this is a unique attribute to the revolve function. So I grab my smart dimension, and I'm going to click on the outside line here first. Click and release. And now I come up to my revolve line. Click and release. Now you'll see if I stay on the left-hand side of that line, I get a radius. If I go to the right-hand side of the line, that radius is converted into a diameter. So I go to the right-hand side, click and drop it. I want to dimension this at 65. Similarly, I'll do the same thing for the top diameter. This top diameter, I'm going to go ahead and dimension that at 30. I need some height of this first step. That happens to be 35. And my second step height here happens to be 20. You'll notice I'm fully dimensioned now and fully defined. And I can exit out of my sketch. Now, one thing to note here is I have dropped my reference line down below. So I kind of want to keep track of that, where that revolve line is. Now, I could have dimensioned this with the radius. It doesn't really matter. I prefer diameter when I do revolves because it makes it a little clearer what the final size will be to me. All right, so now we're going to come out and we're going to exit out of our sketch, but we're not going to close our sketch. We're just going to go out to the features and then hit the revolve boss base button. So I'm going to go features, revolve boss base. Now, because it has a reference line that looks like an axis of rotation, that construction line, and a closed body, it guesses pretty well that I'm going to do a revolve. Now, these boxes over here are different options, and I could choose a different point to revolve around. I'm going to keep it, though, the way it's selected. If it's not selected, I can clear it, and then I can choose it. I can go around in a couple different directions, so usually you're only going around in one direction. I can go anywhere from a non-zero number to 360 degrees. So let me show if I went like 225 degrees. You'll see that I got a pie-shaped object there in the revolve. But I really want it to be 360 degrees. Now, while I have it less than 360, you can see that I can change my direction of the revolve with this toggle. For our purposes, let's go 360 degrees. A couple of other options here. I could go a second direction. I could also make it a thin feature, meaning it's not a closed body. And if I had multiple contours to my sketch, I could select all or part of the contours I wanted to revolve. But that looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and hit the green check mark and accept it. You'll see now I've got my body right there. So I've revolved. Let's hop back over here and see what's next. So you'll see that after I've done my revolve, what I need to do now is I need to add the little square nub on the top of my part, okay? This little square nub. And to do this, I'm going to use what's called a center rectangle, because you'll notice that I took advantage of symmetry and put the origin in the middle of the part. So that's advantageous to us. This cube is a cube, 15 millimeters by 15 millimeters by 15 millimeters tall. So let's go ahead and draw that. I'm going to start a sketch, sketch tab, sketch button, click my top surface, and here I'm going to grab center rectangle. With that center rectangle, I want to come down and drop once on the middle of the circle, the origin, pull it out, and drop it. Notice I don't want to touch any of these underlying entities and infer a size to it, because I'm going to dimension it. I want to make it 15 by 15. I am fully defined. I'm going to roll it off to the side, and I want to go ahead and go features and extrude that up. Now the distance I want to go is 15 millimeters. Preview, looks good, accept it. I've now got most of my part done. Now is where we kind of got to pause. We've got to talk about a couple of brand new features besides our revolve. The first one we already alluded to, and that was our revolve. And now we're looking at this, and what we really want to do is we want to make a chamfer. And a chamfer is this 45-degree relief down here at the bottom. And that 45-degree relief down at the bottom is shown by the letter B in detail B. You'll see that it's 45 degrees and it's 5 millimeters. That's called a chamfer. Now we find the chamfer up here underneath the fillet button. If I click the drop down, I see chamfer. Select that. Now a couple of important things. I want to be sure that I have tangent propagation on, and I want full preview. So the first time you use it, you may not have any preview on. This will show me what I'm chamfering. Now the dimensions of our chamfer are 5 millimeters, and we're going to do it 45 degrees symmetric. So that's what this means, 45 degrees. All right, so the edge that we're going to apply the chamfer to is this lower edge down here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. When I highlight, it turns orange, and when I'm happy with it, I select it. Now see how it appears in the box, edge 1? I can click it again and it'll go away. So if I make a mistake, I can clear it that way. I can come over the box and clear my selections. But that's what I want. There's my preview. So full preview will help you out a lot to envision what you're doing and be sure it looks right. Notice the data for it are down here in this box, and I can edit this data down here as well. But those are correct, so I'll leave it. Hit the check mark to accept it. Well, that was pretty easy. And you know what? A fillet is equally easy. So before we move on, remember that a chamfer is a straight angular line that helps ease transitions between two planar surfaces that meet perpendicular. Very common in manufacturing, very common just to avoid sharp edges and tight corners. Now, if I don't want an angled surface and I want a rounded surface, that's called a fillet. Same button, except I select fillet. Menu looks almost the same. I'm going to go ahead and click on this first constant fillet size. I can change that. Tangent propagation, full preview. Now my fillet for this one is 5 millimeters. And that is shown further on down our document, again in our details. So you'll see detail A and C show fillets. They're 5 millimeters. The way we define a fillet is by its radius, and that radius becomes tangential to the two surfaces where it meets. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my fillet tool, and these are the fillet options. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be sure it's symmetric, 5 millimeters. It's very handy to keep tangent propagation selected and full preview. Now you'll notice I can apply this fillet to more than one location. So as I click on this edge, you'll see the fillet will show up. There's edge 1. Now I also want to do these top surfaces. So I'm going to click on the edge. And you'll see that it goes around that corner, but it doesn't wrap around. And the reason is because these are not tangent edges. So I have to go around and select, and I'm holding my center wheel down and picking off each surface I want to fillet. Same thing, if I choose a fillet accidentally, let's just say I click here, go, oops, I didn't want that. All I've got to do is I can either come up and right click and delete it, or I can click it a second time. So I'll click it here, oops, I didn't want it, click it a second time, it goes away. Roll my model around, it looks like my fillet's correct. Again, I can change my variables, 5 millimeters, but that's correct, and then hit my check mark. And now I've made my part. And you'll see that my part was made up of a revolve, a boss extrude, a chamfer, and a fillet. Now, while I've got your attention for a second, let's take a quick look at our design tree over here in the rollback bar. I can roll this blue bar back by grabbing with the little fingers, and I can walk through my model, how it was made. Very handy to see how we constructed the model. So we're going to go ahead and save this part. File save. And I'm going to navigate over to second hour, 1.2.5, and I'm just going to save this as 1.2.5. save it as a SolidWorks part, and that's what you'll submit. Thanks for watching.